Old Mrs. Wilson didn't know what Solomon's words meant. She squeezed out an awkward smile, and said, "Why are you saying this?" After that, she said to Noah quickly, "It's rare that President White came to the door in person. Don't you come here quickly and invite President White to sit in? This is your future in-laws. I won't come in." Solomon waved his hand with a cold face, and said, "I came here today, mainly to talk about the marriage between the two families." Mrs. Wilson hurriedly said, "Please rest assured, Mr. White, the courtesy we should have at the wedding banquet, there will be no less. Please say it, Mr. White, if you have any requirements." Solomon said coldly, "Then I will make a long story short. Our White family has recently thought about it and felt that the different ways are not conspiring for us to get along together. Therefore, this time we are here to cancel the marriage contract between Gerald and your Wendy." "What, do you want to cancel the marriage contract?" The old Mrs. Wilson and Noah Wilson were both shocked. Wendy behind her was silly, and she blurted out, "Why? Gerald and I have booked the big day." After speaking, she asked Gerald, "Gerald, what is going on?" Gerald stretched out his hands awkwardly, and said, "This is a family arrangement, and I can't help it. The Wilson family is about to collapse. The relationship between the two families was booked long ago, and even the marriage has been booked. Now all relatives and friends know about it and are waiting for the wedding next month. At this time, the White family actually wanted to cancel? The old Mrs. Wilson is looking forward to getting married with the White family, and relying on the White family to fly to the top. Now the White family is about to cancel it with a single sentence. Doesn't this vanish all her big dreams? Moreover, although Wendy and Gerald are not married, they have been together for a long time. Some time ago, the two children were careless and got pregnant unexpectedly. In order not to make gossips, Lady Wilson asked Wendy to knock off the child and prepare to wait for marriage. Unexpectedly, White's family will now come directly to retreat. Isn't this playing with the granddaughter for so long? Moreover, she also made her belly bigger once, so she was going to leave? She was very angry and tremblingly asked, "Mr. White, why are doing this? My Wilson family has not offended you. Moreover, we have always treated Gerald as our own son. He had been with Wendy before. For a child, I also think that the reputation of the two families should be taken into consideration, and we can't get pregnant before unmarried, so I advocated that Wendy had the child knocked out. You can't do this to her, right?" Speaking of the child, Wendy burst into tears. Solomon sneered and said, "If this matter is to be blamed, you can't blame Gerald, just blame your old Mrs. Wilson for being too shameless." This, old Mrs. Wilson didn't expect. Solomon cursed directly on her head and couldn't help asking, "What happened to you, Lady Wilson?" Solomon hummed, "The villa I gave to Charlie, you guys were going to grab it too. For people with no character like you, how can I become relatives with you?" The old Mrs. Wilson was dumbfounded, and blurted out, "My family, this is a matter between us and Charlie, so why it bothers you?" Solomon said coldly, "You Lady Wilson is really shameless. That villa is my honor to Mr. Charlie, you dare to snatch it? You don't look at it, you're a shush. T." Mrs. Wilson felt a sharp pain in her chest. This Solomon doesn't give her respect. If the family is rich, can they insult me like this? However, she did not dare to refute it at once. Because she knows that she is at a loss in this matter. Moreover, she really did not expect that Solomon would respect Charlie Rubbish so much. This in the end is why. At this time, Wendy sat on the ground, watching Gerald crying and said, "Gerald, I was pregnant with your child, you can't leave me." Gerald on the side said lightly, "If you were to blame your grandma and your father, oh yes, and your brother." As he said, Gerald said again, "Also, you even beat Libbo. You know that Libbo has been in my White's house for 40 years and saved my father's life. And he was the one who looked after me when I was young. I was saved by Uncle Libbo when I stumbled into the water. Otherwise, I would be dead now. Uncle Libbo is no different from my grandfather to me. You actually beat him to rob the villa. How outrageous! A shameless family cannot be like my family. I won't be your son-in-law, and don't even want you to be our daughter-in-law." Noah Wilson stood aside, his face pale. Old Mrs. Wilson also had a frightened expression on her face. They thought that Uncle Libbo was just a subordinate, but they didn't expect it to be so important to the White family. Old Mrs. Wilson regrets that her intestines are all green at this time. If she knew that, what villa would she still rob? The villa was not snatched and ruined the granddaughter's marriage. The key is that I still count on relying on the White family to fly and grow up. Now all the chickens have been beaten. Thinking of this, the Lady Wilson almost burst into tears. Sitting paralyzed on the ground, Wendy yelled at the old Mrs. Wilson angrily, "I blame you for the dead Lady Wilson. I blame you for ruining my happiness."